Super excited to introduce to you Shira Miller. So Shira, please come on up. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, Steve. So when I think about the crazy pace of change that we're facing these days, it blows my mind. I mean, according to the World Economic Forum, it took our ancestors 2.5 million years to master fire. But then, it was only 66 years from the time the Wright brothers pioneered human flight to astronauts walking on the moon. A decade ago, it took rap star Drake 10 months to hit 1 billion streams on Spotify. But with the Taylor Swift effect, her last album hit 1 billion streams in 1 week. That rapid pace of change, it's crazy. And I know I'm preaching to the choir here. Steve was talking about it in his address. The level of change that we're facing right now in your industry, it's astonishing. And quite honestly, sometimes it can be overwhelming when you try to keep up with it. And I know that the word remarkable isn't something that we use every day. But in these times of hyper-fast change, we should be talking about it more. Because remarkable, that keeps you relevant. And UHY has done so much to become a top 25 firm. Congratulations, that is amazing. You want to keep that relevance going by being remarkable. Because in these hyper-fast times, the ordinary simply isn't going to cut it anymore. And so in preparation for this discussion today, I met with Steve and some of your leaders. We all got a sense of alignment here, and they started educating me about some of the changes and challenges that UHY and the entire industry really is facing. And I'm talking about things like the huge increase, the transactional drift, where, people would rather email financials than sit down and meet with a client face-to-face and uncover deeper needs. Or, as Steve said in his opening comments, how since the pandemic, things have shifted. People seem to have less motivation, and they're more hesitant to embrace change, just when they need to do it the most. You've also seen evolving technology, workload compression, talent shortages. It's a lot. And UHY's greatest strength, that's its people. It's the partners that are here in this room. But even you, the people who are leading the organization, you are dealing with so many different challenges. This is a difficult, ever-changing environment. And when you think about this, how it's impacting everybody here, the question arises, how am I going to keep up? How am I going to stand out? How am I going to be hireable or promotable? In essence, how am I going to be remarkable? And if we're feeling this way, accomplished professionals, senior executives, imagine how your teams are feeling. According to Deloitte, 2/3 of employees are feeling overwhelmed by the pace of change at work. Another half of them, they're worried that pace is going to leave them behind. And it makes a lot of sense if you consider that in today's workplace, the tools keep changing, expectations, they keep rising, and the goalposts constantly keep shifting. It's exhausting. So that brings me to the challenge that I'm here to tackle with all of you today. It's never been harder to be remarkable, but it's also never been more important. And being remarkable, that's about being extraordinary, about standing out, about doing something significant or unique, making a huge impact. And when you're not feeling you're remarkable, it's kind of like your senses, your experience of the world around you has been cut off. Like you go into a restaurant, you order your favorite meal, and you can't taste a thing. Or you walking into a beautiful rose garden in full bloom, and you can't smell any of the flowers. But when you are feeling you're remarkable, that's when you've got it going on. That's when you can be your most efficient, innovative, spectacular self. Things feel easier. You can get more done and do it even better, even during these hyper-fast days. But even with that in mind, the answer is not to just keep pushing harder. Your people should not just keep their heads down and work harder or obsess about the latest productivity hacks, because you know what that does? It just creates burnout. The latest research has revealed 66% of American workers this year, 2025, have reported burnout. That's an all-time high. So what if there was a different way, where instead of working harder, we learned how to lead smarter? And I can tell you, from my perspective, that there is something different, a better approach. And as a C-suite executive, I have led through exponential change. As a certified executive coach, I have helped people deal with burnout, mergers and acquisitions, downsizing, bankruptcies, culture change, unbearable bosses. I mean, you name it. I've seen it all. And I have been lucky enough to have worked with thousands of leaders in determining what brings out the best in the best people around you. And what I've discovered is there is a tried and tested framework, steps that you can take to activate the remarkable in everyone on your teams. And the good news? Your people already have the remarkable inside of them. Your job is simply to activate that. So I want to talk to you about the framework I created for activating the remarkable. There are 3 steps here, and it's a cycle. It's a repeatable process. It starts by seeing the individual, recognition, and then the next step is to spark optimism and possibility, and then you create real opportunities for growth. And I want to show you what I mean here. Let me give you an example. So, have you ever ordered pizza from Papa John's? I mean, they're the 3rd largest pizza delivery chain in the world, so I'm assuming many of us have. And I was talking to some of the higher-ups about a crisis that they faced a few years ago. And you might remember this. The founder was on a conference call. He said some really inappropriate things. It went viral. And within a few days, they lost 50% of their stock value. And the situation, I mean, it was grim. Employees who once wore the logo with a sense of pride, they were ashamed. You've got franchisees who sunk a huge amount of their life savings in owning their restaurants. They saw sales plummet. Delivery drivers even had people throwing things at the side of their trucks when they were trying to deliver the pizza to everybody. I mean, imagine going to work every day where your company's name was a punchline, or even worse, a symbol of disrespect. And it could have ended the brand. It was that bad. But leaders of the company stepped up and they took some actions to change the culture and make sure that they would include all employees and all customers. And when I learned about this, when I talked to Papa John's, I realized that some of the actions that they took fit with my model. And I want to highlight those. So they started by seeing the individual, and in this case, it was about surveying employees and finding out, what are some of your opinions, what could make things better here. They created employee resource groups, and they encouraged leaders to be more active in recognizing the people. The second step, they sparked optimism and possibility by reinvigorating the company's purpose and values. And in this case, it was about inclusion, making sure that everybody was seen and that everybody would belong. And they also, because pizza should bring joy, decided that fun was going to be a corporate value. And I'll give you an example of something they did one Halloween. A bunch of corporate employees went into Papa John's restaurants, they folded boxes, and they ended up decorating their office to look like the Wizard of Oz. I mean, optimism became the norm. And then they worked on creating opportunities for growth. And Papa John's told people that we want to bring you to the table. I mean, honestly, when you look at the customers for pizza, that's everybody. So they realized we need everybody's perspectives, and they started inviting people at skip levels throughout the company to come and attend meetings and share their insights. And the result? They really turned the culture around. It paid off tremendously. Employee turnover decreased, and a sense of pride was back. Revenues increased, sales increased, and now they have a strong market position. And now that's the actions that Papa John's took. But they're also the same kind of things that we can do as leaders to engage our teams. And I want you to consider, what is the highest that we've ever dreamed of? What is the furthest that we could ever go here at UHY? When you activate the remarkable, you change the way that people work. Instead of becoming something that people have to do, work becomes something that people get to do. It's transformative. And I want to go back to this model right now to share a little bit more about these steps, because I'm going to get very practical. I'm going to have a whole bunch of slides with things you can leave here and start doing tomorrow. Just giving you a heads up on that. So the first step of seeing the individual, that's about recognizing your employees. Because before you can be remarkable, you have to feel seen and valued. And leaders, the people in this room, you've got to learn to recognize the different skills and capabilities and aspirations of your team members. Because when you do, and you let people know that their work matters, their performance soars, and they stay with you longer. Sparking optimism and possibility, that's about driving motivation. Once you have seen your people, you've got to create an environment where they feel optimistic and they know that they can do even more. And if you think about that, when you as leaders face challenges, does that become a setback? Or is it a springboard for you to deliver even more value? And when you are facing an unpredictable world, like the one we are living in these days, optimism can often be the difference between teams that give up and those that innovate under pressure. And so once you have seen people, and once you have sparked that optimism, you've got to create real opportunities for growth. Because once people see their ideas being used and the world opening up, they don't just show up, they step up and they activate their remarkable. So we've gone through this, and something I want to note, this works so well in a multi-generational environment. The company that I work at, our employees range in age from 18 to the mid-70s. And people have different perspectives, different needs. But you know what everybody has in common? They want to feel seen, heard, valued, and motivated. They want to matter. They want to feel remarkable. And I got to tell you, this all begins with you. As the leaders of the company, you're the one that everybody looks at. You're the role models. And so you're going to be modeling the behavior of how to activate the remarkable. And I'm going to tell you, you know how they say most people put your phones away? You can take your phones out. I'm going to have a whole bunch of things you can take pictures of. And it starts with this, because here are some questions that I want you to ask yourself on a regular basis. The first is, what is one win I had today? That is you recognizing yourself. And it could be that you helped one of your employees solve a problem. Maybe you connected a client with a different part of UHY that can solve a problem. That's a big win. The second, what is one challenge that I can see differently? Is there something that you thought that you couldn't do, but then you pushed forward anyway? And you sparked possibility? And the third, what is something new that I'm going to learn this quarter? And when I think about the hypergrowth that you're facing, it could be AI tools. You could have a client that is expanding into a different part of the world and you want to learn Spanish. It could be so many different things. When your employees see you focusing on the win you had and overcoming a challenge and trying to grow, they know that's the way to succeed at UHY. And they're going to want to do it too. So we've talked about the problem today. It's harder than ever before to be remarkable in these hyper-fast times of change. And the wrong thing to do is to just keep pushing harder, because that leads to burnout. The right solution is to see your people, to spark optimism and possibility, and to create opportunities for growth. That all activates the remarkable. And let's go into how you do this now, okay? And the first step, that is about seeing the individual. As I said earlier, you can't be remarkable unless you feel seen and valued and recognized. And I want to start by introducing you to one of my favorite managers ever. This is Carol Bivens. So I was 22 years old, working at my first big corporate job, and Carol was my boss. And I gotta tell you, I wanted so hard to do a good job. I worked a lot of late nights, I worked a lot of weekends, but no matter how hard I pushed, it felt like I was always a couple of steps behind. And it wasn't because I wasn't smart or I didn't try hard, I just couldn't quite get it together. So I was a little worried that maybe I was gonna lose my job. And when Carol called me into her office one day, unexpectedly, we didn't have a meeting, I was kind of nervous. I was wondering, should I start packing up my desk? But when I walked in, sat down, Carol looked me in the eye and smiled. And she said 3 things that changed my career and honestly, my life. She started with recognition. She said, "Shira, you're a great writer." Wow, I felt seen. That felt really good. Then she went right in there and said, "However, you're disorganized, and that's causing you to miss deadlines. Yeah, that part wasn't so fun. But because Carol started by calling something positive out, I was able to hear her and really listen to her feedback. And then she offered support. She said, we're going to work together, and I'm going to help you get organized and succeed. I mean, she didn't just criticize. She offered me a roadmap. She gave me real support. And I can tell you at that moment, it felt like I took a 100-pound backpack off of my shoulders. And I ended up leaving that room with a set of tools and motivation and confidence that I didn't have before. Carol was the first person in the workforce who saw my remarkable. She helped activate it. And you can do the same thing for your employees. Here are some steps for having a remarkable conversation. And I'm going to go over these again in just a second, but I'll tell you what Carol did by recognizing my unique strengths, by giving me honest feedback, as you can do for your people, and by providing support. It changed everything. I learned how to manage multiple priorities, and within a year, and not only did I turn things around, I got super organized. I mean, you could call me anal, I'm just telling you. I'm really organized these days. And within a year, I was able to get promoted. And it wasn't just about being more efficient. Gosh, that gave me financial breathing room just at the time I had to start paying back my student loans. So it changed so many things. And the steps that she took with me, that's what set me up ultimately to become a C-suite executive. I have used these steps with my people, and you can do the same with yours. And I have a question for you. What is it gonna take for you to be remembered? Because Carol, she passed away in 2018. And we had a lifelong positive relationship. She was always there to offer advice. We would go out to dinner sometimes. Amazing, amazing woman. Activating the remarkable, that is the best way for you to cement your legacy. That's how you can be remembered. And yeah, that is why over 30 years later, I'm still talking about Carol. And recognition matters a lot at work. Employees who feel recognized are 45% less likely to leave. And as Steve was talking about with the business overall, retention is incredibly important. You've got to keep your best people. And so when you start to recognize them, 71% of employees said they would have stuck around longer. And the thing is, you don't have to spend a lot of time or a lot of money in order to recognize people. So I work at National DCP. I'm the Chief Communications Officer, and we are the $3 billion supply chain serving Dunkin' Donuts. And my CEO, Stephen, does something simple that is so effective. Every Friday morning during our executive team meeting, he asks us the same question. What do we need to recognize? And he takes notes. You know, we come prepared because we know he's going to ask it. He takes notes. And you get bonus points if you can point to people who are collaborating between different departments. It's the best kind of recognition. And, you know, he doesn't just get the information and, you know, do something generic. What Stephen does is he writes specific notes of recognition to people. It's email, it's regular note if they don't have the company email, if they're working in the field at one of our distribution centers or if they're a truck driver. And I'll give you an example of what this looks like. So he sent a note recently to one of my employees named Emily. She shared it with me. And it was, Emily, thank you for keeping our franchisees and our employees informed during the hurricane event. Your timely updates ensured that people were safe, and it also made sure that franchisees knew when their deliveries would start again. We appreciate you being proactive. So Emily shared that with me because it was specific and it made her feel seen. It showed that she mattered. And when you're thinking about how you can recognize your people, here's how you can create a meaningful thanks. And now sometimes you do need to send a general note out to a whole bunch of people. That's a dear team. But when you're trying to have high impact recognition, mention the person by name. And then try to be specific in recognizing their accomplishments, exactly what they did. Not a, hey, you're doing a great job. Go into the details. That shows they matter. And talk about how it aligns with company values. In the case of Stephen and Emily, being proactive is one of our company values, so he tries to weave it into his recognition. And here's a bonus tip. When you're doing this, don't send the same notes to the same people, because that will be inauthentic. And then it's not going to be believable. Save it for when it really matters and it counts. And this makes such a huge difference. I can tell you, in my company, people are constantly calling me since I'm in charge of comms and telling me the impact it's had. Like the warehouse selector in Chicago who got a handwritten note from Stephen. He took it home to share with his family. And the next day, his kid took it to show and tell at school. I mean, that's amazing. You can feel the positive energy and see how it's making a difference. And when I was talking to Josh Kirkbride here, Chief Energy Officer, is that your actual title? I'm just asking. He is so passionate and excited about recognizing people. And Josh told me he tries to make it as genuine and specific and timely as possible to make sure people feel recognized. I mean, it's heartfelt and it's meaningful. And Josh shared an example of one of his principals, Julian, and he did something incredible. So Julian was in charge of a complex state audit that one of your clients was experiencing, and the situation, I mean, it looked a little risky. The client was worried they were going to owe money. But then Julian dug in, and he spotted some opportunities. He found a couple of overlooked details that allowed them to amend previous filings. And instead of owing money, the company got a $200,000 refund. Wow, that's such a big win, not only for the client, but also for UHY, because it demonstrated the value long-term that you've got for this client. And as Josh told me, and what Josh ended up doing, I've got to go into that. He ended up recognizing Julian at a big meeting at your firm. You probably recall hearing about this example. And it meant so much to Julian to have this story told. Because as Josh told me, when you have specific recognition like this, it's transformative. We as leaders don't understand the significant impact that we can make on people. And when you have that moment that you put them in the spotlight, that can last with them for years. So that's what it means to see your people. Calling out what they did, that's remarkable. And then making sure everybody knows about it and reinforcing how much they matter. So here are a couple of tips that can help you start to see your people on a more regular basis. And the first one here is to pay attention. Start noticing what's already going right at UHY. And look, I know you're busy. As partners, you have so much on your plate. But when you hear about something that a team or a person did, and it makes you smile, that's the moment. That's when you pause and you write it down. It could be on the Notes app on your phone. You could even go old school and put it on a Post-it note and stick it on your monitor. That's what you need to pay attention to. And start your meetings with recognition, like my CEO, Stephen, does. However you gather with your people, it could be a weekly call, a daily huddle, something big that you do monthly or quarterly. Start the meetings by calling out one thing that's positive that you're seeing, and it's going to make a difference. And also, get personal. Think about the people that you work with on a regular basis and learn at least one personal thing about each of those individuals. I mean, when Bob from Professional Services hears that you also share his love of the TV show Severance, or you're asking him about his daughter's soccer game, he's going to feel seen and he's going to feel appreciated. So we talked about seeing your people, and the next step here is to spark optimism and possibility, because as I said, that drives motivation. So do you know what experts say is a difference between people who give up and those who don't? It's optimism. Optimism is positively associated with tenacity and flexibility. And that's because optimists see obstacles as temporary setbacks. They expect positive outcomes on the long term. And when you have optimism in your culture, it creates a sense of hope and purpose and connection. It makes you and your team so much more resilient. You can bounce back from unexpected challenges. And optimism also creates a sense of trust. And when you've got that trust and connection, you've got psychological safety. People can take chances. They can speak up. They can explore innovation and do the kind of things that you need people to do in order to be a top 20 firm in 2030. So research has also shown that when you lead with optimism, you get a 20% increase in employee connection. Stress at work, that goes down by 30%, and profits grow. So yeah, that's a big reason why we are talking about it. And the other side of this is to show people what's possible. Because when you do that, it changes everything. People are aware that their skills and capabilities can allow them to do more. It reinforces that you can make a difference. You can influence positive outcomes. And when I think of those factors, when I think about, optimism and possibility, the person who comes to mind is Paul Piper. And Paul is a driver with my company. I mean, if America runs on Duncan, Duncan runs on National DCP. And Paul is the kind of guy that makes that happen. Each week, he drives a route from Massachusetts to Maine, delivering coffee, napkins, donut sprinkles, you name it, anything you see in a Dunkin' store. And he's doing it in some of the worst winter weather possible. And as you can imagine, as a supply chain and distribution company, safety is really critical for us. So when a driver goes 250,000 miles or 500,000 miles without an accident or an injury, that's huge. Think about it, especially with your own commute. Can you imagine that? And we make a big deal about it. But 1 million miles? That seemed like a unicorn. It felt impossible until Paul did it. And it wasn't just because Paul is disciplined or that he cares deeply about the customers he serves, though both are certainly true. It's because Paul believed it was possible. And Because we listened to him. We asked Paul, what can we do to support you as a driver? What are your top concerns? And he told us, it's the winter weather. I want to make sure I've got the best safety equipment. I want to know about forecasts. And we listened. Dispatchers in the Northeast, they changed practices. They became very proactive with everybody in the area. They changed some of the safety with the tractor trailers. And that made a difference. I mean, Paul, he didn't just feel seen as an employee. He felt seen as a human being. And seeing that we were acting on his feedback, that gave him a lot of confidence. And he started believing, because it took a decade to drive 1 million safe miles with the particular routes that he drives. He started believing it was possible. And then once he hit it, we made a huge deal about it in the company. And then something amazing happened. Within 3 years, 19 other drivers hit 1 million safe miles. 19. That's astonishing. That's record-breaking. And it's all because they thought, if Paul can do it, I can do it too. And I'll tell you something that really sticks out for me in the story. Paul called me after a local newspaper did a story on him, because this is a big deal in the industry, and he told me, I shared the article with my 84-year-old mother, and she cried. Happy tears. That's the power of possibility. And so when you think about sparking possibility with your team, it's simple. Ask what they need to be successful. You could have someone that is an emerging superstar on your team that needs one little change in the way that they work, and then they rise to the top of the ranks here. Listen to their feedback and act on their input. And have a conversation with them about this. I was at a conference a couple of weeks ago for women in entertainment, media, and technology, and I was asked the question, what if I talk to somebody and they give me a laundry list of 30 things? I'm like, okay, acknowledge that you can start with one. Prioritize that and tell them you're going to work on it. And then tackle the next thing on the list. So this is how you spark possibility. And the key here is to question perceived barriers. Just because you've done something the same way forever, maybe there is a better way. Maybe you can push past boundaries. And even if you don't think it's possible, try anyway. Take, for example, the 4-minute mile. Do we have any runners in this room? Any runners? Then I'm going to tell you a new story. So, experts used to believe that humans could not run a mile in less than 4 minutes. They thought the strain would be too much on our bodies. And then in 1954, Roger Bannister ran a mile in 3 minutes and 59 seconds. And that was incredible. But what was really remarkable was within a year, 3 other runners broke that 4-minute mile. And now, decades later, the record is 3 minutes and 43 seconds. And shaving 16 seconds off, that is a lot. So why does this matter to us? Well, when we as leaders, or we as a company, start pushing past barriers and showing people what's possible, we don't just change one person. We change a belief. Company-wide, culture-wide, and that's how you activate what's possible. That's the spark. And remember when I said this all starts with you as leaders? Same thing with optimism. Come up with one good thing that you can focus on. Well, I gave you a couple of examples earlier. Maybe you're helping an employee, or you're giving good counsel to a client. Maybe you found $20 in your coat pocket. It could even be, if you're having an especially bad time of it, maybe you're just feeling neutral and you just survived the day. But when you can come up with that one good thing, it makes a difference. Let me explain this. So you probably figured out by now that I'm an upbeat person. But optimism is not about wearing rose-colored glasses. This is not toxic positivity where you ignore the reality of what's going on around you, because that's how you're going to lose credibility. This is about genuine optimism. Just finding one thing that happened to you or your team or the people around you or another area of UHY and focusing on that, because when your employees see you doing it, they're going to model that behavior too. So, in sparking optimism, here are a couple of things that you can do immediately. The first here is to celebrate wins. And when I talked about Julian's example, that's a huge win, but celebrate all wins. Big, small, and talk about them. I heard that you just brought an internal communications expert on your team. Good going, because that person is going to help you celebrate this throughout the company in all of your vehicles. The second step, reframe situations. Instead of trying to figure out what's wrong, ask what's right. And that's what you focus on. And you tailor optimism to specific generations, because the generations see optimism differently. When you think about baby boomers and Gen X, to them, optimism is about stability. It's about things are going to be okay in the long term. But when you talk about Gen Z and millennials, optimism is more about being innovative and trying new things and inclusion. So make sure you're addressing your employees appropriately when you're talking about this, and recognize what's going to motivate them. So we have talked about seeing the individual and sparking optimism and possibility, but you know what? That's not going to go anywhere unless you create real opportunities for growth. And it doesn't even have to be a promotion. It could be a stretch assignment or a chance for somebody to gain their confidence and their voice in the organization. And I want to share an example here. So back in the 1990s, I used to work for Days Inn's headquarters. And we were a budget hotel chain. Back in the day, we had about 1,200 franchise units, doing fine in the marketplace, nothing fancy. And then a national labor shortage hit that caused a lot of problems. We were having a really hard time staffing our call centers. This was pre-internet. I mean, this was a long time ago. So we didn't have a lot of capabilities we could tap into. And I remember somebody in our HR team came up with an idea. And it was, what if we tried recruiting older workers? And you got to keep in mind, over 30 years ago, that was unusual thinking. I mean, conventional wisdom was that people over 50 were trying to wind down their careers. So this was different. But we started placing ads, and that's how I met Howard Wilson. So Howard was 68 years old. He was a retired executive from the insurance industry. I think he used to work in sales. And Howard, he had retired a few years previously. And he thought his days were going to be filled with golf and grandkids. And they were for a while, until Howard realized he was bored. He didn't know what to do with himself. So when he saw an ad for a customer service agent with our organization, he decided to apply. And he got the job, and here's where the story gets good. Howard didn't just do a good job, he crushed it. Customers loved his empathy, his ability to solve problems. He did a brilliant job, and the people running the call center noticed. I mean, he got promoted, he became a supervisor, he started leading different cross-functional teams within the organization, and then he got promoted again, he became a manager. So at age 68, Howard experienced tremendous growth. He didn't expect it, and it made him feel remarkable. And what started as one experiment turned into a national movement. At Days Inns, we were so pleased with our own hiring practices, we decided to create a national older worker job fair. It was called Senior Power, and we had hundreds of employers come to our hotels to recruit thousands of older workers. And it was so successful. Days Inns changed hiring practices nationwide. So what does this mean for you as leaders? I mean, you don't have to create a national older worker job fair to see your people. What you should do, though, in taking a page from Howard's supervisor, is look at your people with fresh eyes. Do you have somebody quiet on your team that if they get a little bit more attention or a stretch assignment could really soar? That makes such a difference. And growth matters a lot. 63% of employees who quit said it's because they had nowhere to go in the organization, nowhere to advance to. 94% said they would have stayed longer if people had invested in their development. And when you do develop people, 34% of people said it's linked to higher levels of retention. And I had the pleasure of talking to Cindy Hanafi from here at UHY about this, and she told me there's one belief that she has held so dearly her entire career, and that is you've got to invest in your people. And Cindy gave me a recent example of how she did this. So she was leading a brainstorming session with a bunch of managing directors, and Jackson Bush is a young staffer on her team, and she thought, I think this should be something that he can lead. So she gave him all of the parameters of the assignment, the desired outcomes, the facilitation tool, and then she said, go figure it out. And Jackson, he did a wonderful job. He pulled the group together, he asked questions, he facilitated, he kept a whole room full of managing directors on track, and you know that's hard. That's real hard to do. And then he followed up with clear objectives, next steps, timelines. He did a wonderful job. And Cindy witnessed this quiet staffer, because he was one of the quiet ones, transform right before her eyes into a trusted consultant. That's how you create growth opportunities for people. And here are a couple of things that you can do to create growth opportunities. Identify the hardest working person on your team, and then ask, what can I do to help you get to where you're going faster? That question can make a huge difference. Then, as Howard's boss did, look at someone with fresh eyes and recognize their untapped potential. A third step, pick a high achiever and have them present or interact with higher-ups or clients. And you know, this was transformative for the gentleman right here in the front row, Ryan Godfrey. Because when Ryan was a young team member, senior leaders in the organization brought him along to quarterly client meetings. And he started realizing by being there, he saw strategy, and he realized what was important to clients, like face-to-face connection and actively listening to uncover hidden needs. And because of that experience, Ryan is a kind of leader now that actively grows his people. And because of the perspective he gained, he is incredibly active in growing clients for everyone at UHY, trying to find cross-functional opportunities. So professional growth also activates the remarkable. So, and this is, feel free to download this, it's a toolkit. You know, we have talked about the problem that we face in these fast-changing times. It's harder than ever before to be remarkable, but you don't want to just keep pushing harder. That creates burnout. And the right solution is to see, spark, and create with your people. That's how you activate the remarkable. And if you'd like to activate the remarkable, here is a toolkit I created. It's got some actionable steps. You can share it with your teams as well. So all of this brings me to my next story. And that is a woman who has brought everything together in the Activate the Remarkable model that I'm talking about. And that's Susan Orr. She has been at UHY for 35 years, and it has been a time where she's seen a lot of change, and she has created even more of it. And Susan told me about when she was a young associate. She went to her manager, she got an assignment that she thought, in her words, was kind of boring. And so she went to this gentleman, a man of few words from a different generation, and she told him, you know, I'm not so thrilled with this. And then he said, then don't do it. Lead it. And Susan took that advice to heart. It was a transformative moment for her. And she ended up creating the employee benefit audit practice in St. Louis. She has grown that to the national practice, working with a collaborative team. And today, she activates the remarkable by bringing different people to the table, by recognizing people's successes and their struggles, and by, when the challenges and times get hard, she rolls up her sleeves and helps them meet deadlines. And she also applies that to clients, looking to solve their problems. Her goal is to be helpful. She listens deeply and then tries to recommend UHY solutions that are going to make a difference. And so when we think about activating remarkable relationships at UHY, what I'm talking about right now, it starts with people and culture. And what you're going to hear about over the next few days is partners showing up for one another's clients, and you sharing your insights generously, and you're acting with intention to help others grow. Because when we activate growth together, everyone wins. And here's a slide. You can take a picture of this. Some specific actions that you can take when you leave here. I urge you, write 2 specific notes of recognition for people on your teams, people who are doing things right. Start a staff meeting by focusing on one win. Bonus points if it's something people didn't think was possible. Pick one person for a stretch assignment and support them. The support part's key. And then schedule a face-to-face meeting with a client to understand their challenges and recommend UHY solutions that are going to help. So what would happen if we all activated the remarkable in ourselves, in our teams, at UHY overall? Your people, they would feel seen, heard, valued, and motivated. You would see turnover go down, innovation would increase, you would be squarely on the right track to be a top 20 firm in 2023. And your culture, it would feel remarkable because it is. And here's what I want to leave you with. You don't have to invent the next world-changing app or have a huge reveal in order to activate the remarkable. You just have to look around with a little courage and a lot of intention and notice what's going right. Because when you do that, you spark possibility. You help people bring their best selves to work. And you don't just create a better culture, you change lives. Thank you.